Tonight, we take a look at one of history's biggest famous monsters, Godzilla. We sit down with the directorial team of the new film, Shin Godzilla, and we meet a man who walks in Godzilla's footsteps, literally. All that and more on Famous Monsters TV. We're here in Emeryville at the incredible Kimono My House, where you'll find the largest selection of Japanese character toys in the known universe. I'm Phil Kim, your host, and the publisher of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. Tonight, we talk about a king. He has his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He has received MTV's Lifetime Achievement Award and even has a Blue Oyster Cult song named after him. I am talking about the global icon, Godzilla. He's been around for more than 60 years, and our very own August Rigoni is here to tell us how it all got started.
Dynamic violence, savage action, spectacular thrills. Godzilla, king of the monsters.
So where did Godzilla come from? Honda was so affected by seeing the destruction in Hiroshima that it haunted him. When they finally decided to do this monster picture in 1954, Honda created Godzilla to be an allegory that was anti-war. According to Honda, who sort of created the character, what we see as fire, it is actually akin to radioactive fallout. He's breathing like the power of the H-bomb. Why has Godzilla endured for so long? A lot of kids love dinosaurs. And what's better than a superpowered dinosaur? And that's exactly what Godzilla is. After like 6 decades, there's a lot of freaking Godzilla movies, and they're not all the same. Everybody might have the opinion, people who aren't fans, that, you know, when you've seen one giant monster picture, you've seen them all. But with the Godzilla films, they've all thematically been different. Godzilla was always evolving, changing with the times to suit the audiences of the time. The second Godzilla was rushed into production, Godzilla Raids Again, not to really cash in, but to, you know, yeah, it was done to cash in. But they still kept it kind of like serious. They added another monster to it, which kind of established the monster versus monster format. And then they took a break because they started doing other films at Toho Studios, like Rodan, Ran, and then you get Mothra, and so on. And you get into the 60s, and you have entertainment pictures. So right off the bat with King Kong versus Godzilla in 1962, it is made for mass audiences. It becomes a huge hit. Then you get to the next film in 64, and it's Godzilla versus the Thing, or Mothra versus Godzilla. Later that same year, they release Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. And then they decide, we're gonna wrap it up. Audiences were declining for Japanese motion pictures. Theaters were closing down, studios were closing down theaters as audiences were pulled away by television. And they decided to do one last blowout picture, which is Destroy All Monsters in 68. And they decide to retire Godzilla. Unfortunately, a year later, because another studio is doing these kiddie matinee pictures, packages rather, with one feature film and a bunch of different cartoons and whatnot to keep kids busy while their parents were shopping, Toho decided to emulate that and use their biggest star for children, and they brought Godzilla back for a series of kids movies. Then you get into Godzilla versus the Smog Monster in 71, environmental, going back to an environmental theme. Then they introduced Mechagodzilla in 74 for the 20th anniversary of the Godzilla series. The movies, again, were declining. Television was more popular with these types of things like Japanese superhero programs. And they did one last Godzilla picture, brought Honda back, did a more straight-faced Godzilla, and wrapped up the series in the 70s. And then you come back in the 80s with Return of Godzilla, which was made in 84, brought to the States as Godzilla 85. And then you have a number of films follow it. That wrapped up in 1995 to make way for the American film done by Roland Emmerich. And then we got, you know, the tiger from Jungle Book as a big iguana. And that sank like a brick. And when that wasn't successful, they decided to bring him back for Godzilla 2000. That launched another series of pictures through 2004. Unfortunately, it wound up ending with Godzilla Final Wars in 2004, which is probably the most abominable picture that I ever had the horror of witnessing. I hate that movie. Can I say that on TV?
August, thank you so much for coming by. You know, I always wanted to ask you, What got you into Loving Godzilla?
Well, being a little kid watching tons of monster movies on TV, you see this super dinosaur, and what's not to love?
It's true. Then you are going to love what's coming up next.
And they're going to love it too. We have an interview with two of the Japan Academy Prize winning directors of the latest film in the series, Shin Godzilla.
Welcome back, Monster Kids, to Famous Monsters TV. I'm Phil Kim.
And I'm August Rigoni. Godzilla first appeared on the big screen in 1954, the roar that was heard around the world, but now he's back for his 29th entry, Shin Godzilla.
The filmmaker's directorial team traveled all the way from Japan to tell us what it was like to work with the King of Monsters.
Check it out.
弾作戦フェーズ1を開始する射撃開始繰り返す射撃開始遅れ
CP、C マルヒト、了解。射撃する。発射用意。発射。
When you were growing up as children, do you remember what your first Godzilla memory was and how you reacted to seeing the monster on screen?
私が最初に見たのは12歳の時ですね、ゴジラは。
So Godzilla was made, obviously so many years ago. The first time I actually got to see it was when I was 12.
ゴジラというのは1954年から。
And I remember watching the old King Kong movie as well and seeing Godzilla. And there was quite a bit of time between the release of the Godzilla movie to the time that I was able to see it, about 5 or 7
やっ
years.
とゴジラが見れた。ですごい。もうそれでもう。
And when I saw it, I was just blown away.
私は幼稚園の時にモスラ対ゴジラという映画の
So the first time I ever saw a Godzilla movie, and it wasn't necessarily the first one, it was one of the 2 or 3 that came
上
after.
映したのではなくて、それからしばらくして
It was actually when I was in kindergarten.
再放送みたいな感じでやった。それが最初。
And I remember seeing that, and then the Hedra or Hedora along with it.
幼稚園の子供としては非常に心に深い傷を負ってしまって。
And being a child of that age, it definitely left its mark on me.
How did you react when you found out that you were both going to be working on a brand new Godzilla?
やっぱりすごく嬉しかったですね。昔はその東
So I
宝
was
の
thrilled when I found out I was going to be working on the new Godzilla movie.
監督はできなかったんですけど、私は東宝という会社にいないので。
I haven't, when Toho Studios was making most of the Godzilla movies, I wasn't with the company at that time.
全くそのよその
I was doing more freelance freelance work. And so after joining the company, just being able to get this opportunity, I was just very, very happy.
Sakura-san?
私はゴジラ映画を作りたくて東宝スタジオに入ったんです。
So I actually entered Toho Studios in order to create Godzilla movies. Like this was the whole reason why I joined the company. And then back then we had a specialized special effects cinematography team that worked just on these type of movies. And at one point that team kind of fell apart. It went away. And I'm the last special effects cinematographer for Toho Studios. And so it was very thrilling and exciting to be asked to work on this new Godzilla movie with that title.
Did you have a favorite scene that you worked on in the film?
私が好きなのはあれですね、ビルのオフィスセット。
So there's a scene where a lot of office buildings are being destroyed.
今回
And because this movie was done mostly in CG, there wasn't a whole lot of miniature work being done at that time.
中でも印象的に残ったのはオフィスの。
But this was one aspect of it that has really stayed with me because we did all the miniatures for it, and destroying it was a lot of fun.
菊池さん?
私は、見てない人にこの話をするとネタバレになっちゃう。
So, kind of speaking to people that maybe haven't seen the movie yet, one of my favorite scenes to do was towards the end of the movie when we were taking down Godzilla.
ビジネスマンのビジネスマンや。
There was a scene with a bunch of people, very, salary office workers, students all running around, and then the trains that were kind of crashing everywhere.
突っ込むところがやっぱりすごくやりたかった場面。
And I kind of wish we could have done that in the miniatures instead of CG, but it was still a very fun scene.
Much has been made about the design, the look of Shin Godzilla. How did that look come about? Was it multiple people giving ideas, or was it a single vision?
本当最初に僕と庵野で一緒にその作業に入った時に。
So it was really a collaborative effort that was done over a long period of time. Since CG was being used, we didn't have to pinpoint or narrow down the design of it. From the very beginning.
解像度が低いのでよく見えなかった。でも今はよく見えるんだったらこういうふうに見えてたんじゃないか。
So as we started to create it, we would decide, we want, this to be more like this, or we want this to shine more, or we want, his powers or whatnot to look more like this after we kind of saw the rough draft of the CG.
本当はもっと内側から光ってたりとか。で、そういう。
So it really did take a lot of time, and it was effort on everybody's part.
でも。途中で CG でやるって決まった時に尻尾の長さを
So one thing that was made a bit different between the previous Godzilla movies where we've had someone in his suit was actually the length of the tail. In the old movies it was shorter because if it was made much longer then whoever was in the suit would probably fall over or of course be knocking out things over. So that was one big thing that we did change, was making it very long with the CG.
And finally, is there anything that you would like to say to American fans of Godzilla, or those who have watched the film, who are supporting you, who maybe want to see more from you in the Godzilla world?
さっきの質問の答えとちょっと似ちゃうのかもしれないですけど、実は今回の
So with the Shin Godzilla movie, kind of what I'd like to ask fans to do is if you've seen the movie, please don't tell anybody else about it.
どんな怪獣が出てくるのかもわからない。
Show it to your friends, show it to your family, but we really want our fans to, when they see the movie, to not know what's coming next. I mean, we're all familiar with Godzilla and the history and the fandom and everything.
いずれゴジラになるであろう第二形態と呼ばれる。
The movies that I make, I really want people to kind of anticipate what's coming next, what's going to happen, what kind of new monsters are going to be coming around the corner.
どんな映画かって言っちゃうと。
So just please don't spoil the surprise for anybody else.
Next up, we'll meet a cosplayer who has taken his love of Godzilla to a whole nother monstrous level.
Welcome back to FMTV. Growing up as a young boy, he watched Godzilla level cities. Well, you know what that's like.
Yeah, I do.
Well, anyway, this young boy grew up to be an adult and decided he is going to become Godzilla.
Yeah, so he went out and built his own Godzilla suit. Meet the Kaiju cosplay king, Robert Pruitt.
What is it about Godzilla in particular that steered you in that direction? Why the costume like this?
I've loved Godzilla since I was a kid. I saw a movie with my dad. We found a Godzilla action figure at a garage sale, I believe, somewhere in Arizona. We stopped, picked it up. It was my toy for years till it magically disappeared. Then from then, one day, my friend knew that I'd love Godzilla, and he said, hey, check out a website, becominggodzilla.com, and take a look at what they do. And from there, I learned to make my own suit and just been happy ever since.
So there was a tutorial to make a Godzilla suit,
Absolutely.
And that's what you followed?
Yeah, there's several people that have already done suits just like mine. Well, not necessarily like mine, but other models, even a Mecha Godzilla. So, and there's a good walkthrough out there.
So when you were making this suit, how long did it take you? Did you have a lot of mess ups that you had to scrap and start over?
I had a lot of trouble when I first started the suit because I didn't measure anything. I built it to fit, that's all I did. So there were a lot of complications that I had. The first suit didn't turn out so well, and then the second suit that I built, I learned from my mistakes and then improved it, and that's what you see here. Overall build time, probably off and on for 2 years now.
Wow.
Yes.
And did you work on it like every day, every week, or was it like a continual 2 years?
No, it wasn't a continual 2 years. You work on it a little bit, then you get frustrated with it, kick it around a little bit, come back after a month or so.
And what are the 3 most essential things when you're building this that you have to remember for a design like that?
That's a good question. Probably the one thing that I would encourage everyone to remember, you're going to mess up. It's okay, it's going to happen. Number 2, it's going to break down. You're going to have problems. Just calmly go through it. Damage control is about all you can do. And then lastly, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be an amazing thing to finish up. Did you build it at your house or do you have a workshop?
I have a 2-car garage that I converted into a workshop. Unfortunately, there's no cars in it, but there's full of Godzilla pieces.
Did you make it entirely out of foam? Is that what it is?
It's a lot of foam, liquid latex, and hot glue to hold some pieces together.
Liquid latex? Which parts are the liquid latex? Is it all over it?
It's completely covered in liquid latex.
Oh, okay, well that's really cool. Is it hot in there?
It is very hot in there.
Super hot?
Yes.
I was wondering that.
About 2 hours max is all you got.
So when you're on the con floor in this, is it difficult to get around? You have take things out with the tail?
I do tend to take out people with the tail. I built it so that the tail swings and sways with every movement. Sometimes I knock over booths, just depending on how big the aisles are or how crowded the convention is.
Do you normally bring a handler with you to kind of buffer you?
Absolutely.
Around?
My wonderful wife, she's my handler. And
I feel like she must be very understanding because that's a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
What's your favorite con moment or memory when you're wearing your Godzilla suit?
Last year in 2016, we went to Louisville, Kentucky. I met all 4 of the original suit wearers, and they were all there, and they stood around the suit, enjoyed it. I was there for their photo op, so it was a good time.
Did you think about having them sign it?
I did, but I knew that I was going to keep wearing it, and it would rub off. So.
Have you ever met fellow people doing cosplay from Godzilla?
I have met a few, mostly Ultra 7, but I've never met a Mecha Godzilla, and that's the one thing I'm really looking forward to.
I feel like those would be the best photography shoots ever. What's your most exciting memory for a fan's reaction?
It's still continuous. Every time I see a kid and they come up, sometimes they know Godzilla, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get introduced to Godzilla, and that's a fantastic thing.
I would think that seeing that would be a great lead-in for a kid to decide they want to watch Godzilla.
Oh yeah, that just every kid's and adult's dream to go around and crush tiny cities. So.
Next up, we'll be perusing this crazy place, Kimono My House, which has the largest selection of vintage Japanese anime and sci-fi toys you've ever seen, including some really cool Godzilla stuff. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to FMTV. When it comes to Godzilla merchandise, there are t-shirts, video games, action figures, and even comic books.
But if you're looking for something authentic, something special, you need to stop by this place. I recently sat down with the proprietor, Susan Horn, who started this fabulous, fantastic, amazing place, the legendary Kimono My House. How did it all start, Susan?
I graduated from UC Berkeley in 1976, and I had no plans for my future, and I got a one-way ticket to Japan. I had an idea that I could sell Japanese used kimonos, used clothing. So I brought some back with me, and Shogun was on TV at that time, so I sold out immediately. So I had to fly back to Japan and get more. And a friend of mine came into the store and he said, do you know something about this robot that turns into an airplane? And I was like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
And that was Macross, that was the Valkyrie.
Right. So I asked the kid, where I was buying my kimonos, there were some kids there, and I said, do you know anything about this robot that turns into an airplane? They said, yeah, we know it is. Macross da. They took me to the local toy store and they showed it to me, and I said,
right.
Wow. So I brought those back, I put them on the shelf, and that was the beginning. People that came in and saw them, it just spread like wildfire. And I was buying everything in sight, everything I could find.
You originally had the store where?
On 62nd Street, 2 blocks south of here, on the roof of a warehouse.
In Emeryville,
in
yes.
Emeryville.
And the original showroom you had, when people would walk in for the first time and come in through the door and walk on the landing and it would stop. And if there was no one else in the shop and nobody was being chatty and there wasn't a lot of background noise, you would hear an audible gasp.
Exactly.
People would walk in and just go, but that showroom was floor to ceiling and people would walk in and it was sensory overload.
People would walk in and start to sweat and get stomach aches from, I mean, true. It was like we had to have a handy toilet paper and a bottle of water for some people because people would just be so overstimulated because it was just too much. Like no one had ever seen this much stuff anywhere.
Yeah. Outside of Japan, like going into those mom and pop stores, old school stores in Japan where
and
it's
now
just jam.
I have Japanese people coming here getting stomach aches and needing smelling salts. They walk around, they say, haven't seen any of this stuff for probably 30 years. It doesn't exist in Japan anymore, and there's very few shops that actually have this vast range of the kinds of toys, the kind of merchandise, and the history.
And you also produce your own merchandise? Like
I did.
and
I was
pins.
one of the first to get licensing before it was popular. No one really was interested, but the companies in Japan, the series might be over, it might be finished, and they'd made their money, and now was an opportunity for them to make a little more extra money on the same characters or the same series.
Right.
So I jumped on it, and I got as many licensing contracts as I possibly could, even though I didn't know what I was doing. I guess, and I would
by the seat of your pants.
I just printed as many T-shirts as I could possibly afford, and I still have them left over as dead stock.
Let me see if these are the most popular shirts, if I can remember correctly. Astro Boy, and then Macross. What would the other one be? And Star Blazers are Space Battleship Yamato. Right?
Godzilla.
3 of the most popular shirts, right?
Akira. Actually, Akira was the #1, and it still is.
And here you are still.
I was seriously thinking about retiring and just selling off everything and closing everything. But little by little, people would come and find me, and people would just come knocking on the door. They kept searching me out, and little by little, I realized, I have to open this up again, or I have to at least display what I have. And right now, there's a new resurgence of a lot of the old customers are coming back now that a lot of them are coming back and saying how nostalgic it is and how much it meant to them, and when they were a kid, how they saved their money up until Christmas, and they made the pilgrimage to Kimono My House once a year. And the store meant so much to so many people that I never realized until now. Yeah. People telling me all the time.
Bay Area institution.
And now they're bringing their kids.
That's
and so it's become more fun than it ever has for me. I'm really happy and more enthusiastic than I've ever been about Kimono My House.
For more information on Kimono My House, please visit them on Facebook at Kimono My House Toys.
That's all the time we have for today. But if you want to know anything more about Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, or all the conventions that we do and everything else that we do that's Famous Monsters related, go to famousmonsters.com.
Remember, that's famousmonsters.com.
That is famousmonsters.com.
It's Famous Monsters, right?